Coda is a nice little movie. The title is a double entendre referring to the acronymous designation of a child of deaf adults, which is the movie's premise, and it also refers to the end segment of a piece of music, which alludes to the movie's plot. The plot in question follows a girl named Ruby, played by Emilia Jones, who is the only hearing member of her family. Her father Frank, played by Troy Kotsur, her mother Jackie, played by Marlee Matlin, and her brother Leo, played by Daniel Durant, are all deaf. As the only hearing member of the family, she's largely responsible for translating ASL and helping her deaf family interact with hearing people, including and especially in the course of running their family fishing business in Gloucester, Massachusetts. However, as a high school senior, Ruby secretly joins the choir, as she loves singing. And even though it's expected that she'll continue helping in the family business as the translator after graduation, she has aims to go away for college and pursue her own passions, like singing. So I said last year that The Sound of Metal had an admirably clear and concise premise. A drummer in a metal band loses his hearing. You can say the same thing about Coda. A girl in a deaf family wants to be a singer. But other than having clear premises and including deaf characters, that's about where the parallels end. First of all due respect to Coda, Sound of Metal is a better movie. Better written, better acted, more thoughtful, and more thought-provoking. But more importantly, Sound of Metal is about a hearing person entering the deaf community and is therefore engaging more with what it means to be deaf. With this movie, while it's cool to see the deaf community get more representation, and it's cool that Troy Kotsur is probably going to become the first deaf actor to win an Oscar, after his co-star Marlee Matlin became the first deaf actress to win an Oscar 35 years ago, the deaf angle in Coda is much more incidental than The Sound of Metal. The heart of the movie is a young woman at a crossroads, caught between entering the family business or forging her own path, pursuing something her parents don't really understand and therefore don't approve of. Pretty universal tale, both in movies and in real life. Coda premiered at Sundance 14 months ago and was a small sensation pretty much instantly, winning the U.S. Grand Jury Prize, the U.S. Audience Award, and Best Director for Sean Heder in the U.S. Dramatic section. A lot of movies get pretty hyped out of Sundance, and you usually need to take that hype with a grain of salt. The festival environment is a bubble in its own way, and festival hype doesn't necessarily translate to general audience hype. That said, because Sundance 2021 was virtual, so attendees were watching from their couches instead of from a snowy mountain town in Utah, that might mean the hype is more believable, because it's presumably more informed by the quality of the movies and less by the festival environment and early consensus groupthink. Coda was quickly scooped up by Apple TV Plus for a cool $25 million, a new Sundance record, and the investment paid off because this is Apple TV Plus's first Best Picture nomination. By the way, they're also distributing my early pick for next year's Best Picture winner, The Killers of the Flower Moon, directed by Marty and starring DiCaprio and De Niro. Watch this space. To be perfectly honest, I don't have a ton to say about Coda besides that it's a nice little movie. And it is. Screenplay-wise, it's a little paint by numbers. No real surprises. It's not reinventing the wheel, but, it works. It's certainly competently made, even well made, but visually you can't really talk about it in the same breath as Dune or Power of the Dog or West Side Story or Nightmare Alley or Licorice Pizza. But to be fair, that's maybe to be expected. It's kind of lit and shot like a TV movie, which is probably a reflection of budget more than anything else. And for the record, I did watch this on my iPad, as Apple intended, and that's probably not the best showcase for how the movie looks. It's had an interesting journey to an Oscar nomination, and an interesting journey to an Oscar surge. It came out of Sundance in January with some hype, but wasn't released until August, which is long enough after Sundance that it can't really capitalize on the festival hype, and also long enough before the Oscars that it's not exactly a release date for an awards push. Plus, it was on Apple TV Plus. Yeah, they got their hooks on an audience for Ted Lasso and to a lesser extent The Morning Show, but I don't think there's a ton of awareness of Apple TV Plus movie releases. But I'll take this opportunity to once again shout out Tragedy of Macbeth. Even so, it wound up getting 3 Oscar nominations, for Troy Kotsur in Supporting Actor, for Adapted Screenplay, and for Picture. And it's been progressively surging in all 3 of those categories. Initially, Kodi Smit-McPhee in The Power of the Dog was the frontrunner for Supporting Actor, but other than the floundering Golden Globes, Troy Kotsur has scooped up wins at every meaningful precursor award show. The Critics' Choice, the Indie Spirits, the BAFTAs, and most importantly, the SAG Awards. Makes sense that of all the performers, Kotsur is getting all the awards attention. Not only is he really good in this, but the movie is, more than anything else, a father-daughter movie, so he gets, the Oscar clip moments. In terms of adapted screenplay, the favorite is probably still The Power of the Dog, but Coda notably beat The Power of the Dog at the BAFTAs. Yes, Power of the Dog beat Coda at the Critics' Choice Awards, but given the overlap in voting bodies, the BAFTA win is probably more meaningful. We'll see if that translates to an Oscar win. So, Power of the Dog is probably still the favorite for Best Picture, but let's say hypothetically Coda wins the Oscar for Supporting Actor, as expected, and wins Adapted Screenplay, as it might. What does that mean for Best Picture? In recent history, movies that won both an acting Oscar and a screenplay Oscar have gone on to also win Best Picture roughly half the time, depending on how many years you go back. And let's not forget the SAG Award for Best Cast, which Coda won and The Power of the Dog somehow wasn't even nominated for. That's far from a slam dunk Best Picture predictor. Again, it's a 50% hit rate the last 20 years, but it's not nothing. And it's indicative of how much Coda is surging in the Oscars race, kind of out of nowhere. And then, after I wrote this, but before I recorded it, Coda won the Producers Guild Award for Best Picture, which has predicted the Oscar Best Picture 11 of the last 14 years. So, maybe Coda actually is the Best Picture frontrunner. Though I will say, the years that the PGA misses the Best Picture is when there's a lack of consensus. Like, the Producers Guild Award went to Coda, but the Directors Guild Award went to The Power of the Dog. And in the 6 previous years that the PGA and the DGA split, only 2 of those 6 years, the Best Picture winner go to the PGA award winner. I still think The Power of the Dog is going to win, and to be honest, I think The Power of the Dog deserves it, whatever that means, more than Coda. Coda would be a pretty weak Best Picture winner. There's just not a lot to it, and I hope for a little more complexity from the Best Picture. But even so, it's a nice little movie. Just because it's not complicated doesn't mean it's not effective. It made me laugh out loud multiple times, and it made me tear up multiple times. It's on a short list of movies that did both.